Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I think I'm finally ready. I've had issues with my audio for the last couple of days. Plugged in my mic again today. Something's wrong with it. I don't know. So I've got another handheld microphone, which you'll see here. And hopefully this will do the job. Hopefully everything syncs up properly. Let's talk about 1 Samuel chapter 19 today. This PDF is on our website if you want it. Now, the date that I'm going to use for these events is approximately 1020 BC. That is an approximate date, but probably somewhere around that time. Let's move down to our character section, and I'll add a little bit more of the dating information in. We're going to talk about Saul. He's the first king of Israel. He probably became king around 1050 BC. And then David is the key character in this chapter, really. He became king, he was the second king of Israel. He's been anointed king by Samuel, but he's not the king yet. He probably became king around 1010 BC. So this is about 10 years before that, 10 to 15 years. We're going to talk about Jonathan. Jonathan was David's best friend. He was an honorable man, and he was also the son of King Saul. Michal, we were introduced to in the last chapter. Michal is a woman, not a man. Michal is the wife of David, and she helps him escape from her father, who's trying to kill her husband in this chapter. Then we're going to talk about Samuel. Again, he's been absent for a little while, but he was a prophet of God, and he was also the last significant judge of Israel. We've got a couple of places to point to on the map. The first one is the land of the Philistines. David is going to go to war with the Philistines in this chapter. The Philistines lived towards the Mediterranean coast. Their cities were cities like Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath. Saul's house is mentioned in this chapter, where Saul lived, and we know from chapter 15 that at least back then his house was in Gibeah, and I suspect it was probably still in that same location. David fled from Saul, and he went to be with Samuel. Samuel lived in Ramah, which you can find on the map. Now, before we get into our outline, remember in the last chapter, Saul became embittered. He became jealous, paranoid of David, because David had a lot of success, and Saul's kingdom was kind of crumbling. His reign, at least, was crumbling. His authority and power. And that's because God had rejected him as king. So that leads us into this chapter. Verses 1 through 7, Jonathan has to convince Saul not to kill David. So Saul commanded all of his servants to kill David if they came across him. Jonathan, being David's best friend, told David to hide. He told him about Saul's command, told him to hide, and that he would go and try to convince his father to change his mind. So that's exactly what he did. Jonathan went to Saul. He spoke very highly of David. He talked about David's loyalty, his faithfulness to Saul, how he had went to battle for him. He had always been loyal to him. And he begged his father not to sin against a man who had never sinned against him. So Saul, still being somewhat reasonable at this point, he agreed that Jonathan was speaking rightly and with reason, and so he withdrew his command for his servants to kill David. All right, now verses 8 through 17, Michal helps David escape from Saul. So sometime later, a harmful spirit from the Lord came on Saul, and he once again became very jealous and paranoid about David. He tried to kill him again with a spear, but David was able to evade him, and he escaped to his house. Saul sent men to David's house to kill him, to arrest him and kill him, but Michal, David's wife, helped him escape out of a window. Michal then took an image and she put it in David's bed with a goat hair pillow at the top, presumably, at the top of where the blankets are and then the pillows are. And the image made it appear like David was sleeping in the bed, like someone was in the bed, right? And the goat hair must have matched David's hair. I'm not sure what color that was, but classic movie deception, right? And maybe that's where all the movies get it from. When Saul's messengers came to arrest David, Michal told them that he was sick and he couldn't go to Saul. Well, Saul wanted him arrested anyway, and so he told his men to bring David in the bed, whether he was sick or not. Well, eventually Saul's men figured out that the figure that was in the bed wasn't actually David, but by that time it was too late and David was long gone. Now that leads us to our final section, verses 18 through 24. The Spirit of God protects David at Ramah. David fled to Ramah, where Samuel, the judge, lived, and he told him all that Saul had done to him. There was also a group of prophets who lived there with Samuel. When Saul discovered David's whereabouts, he sent men again to attempt an arrest. But when Saul's men reached Ramah, the Spirit of God came on them, and they began to prophesy. So they were unsuccessful in completing their mission. Saul realized that he had been thwarted. He sent another group of men, and the exact same thing happened to them. Then he sent a third group of men, but the outcome was exactly the same. And then Saul decided, well, you know what? If you want a job done, you got to do it yourself. So he went to Ramah. And on his way to Naioth in Ramah, God's Spirit came upon him, and he began prophesying. So God's Spirit prevented Saul and his men from achieving their evil purpose. You can't fight against God. That was our application from the last chapter. God was protecting David. There was nothing Saul was going to do about it. And now let's finish up with our application for chapter 19. Jealousy can rot your soul and turn your heart to wickedness. Saul's pursuit of David reminds me of those who pursued Jesus. Saul was jealous of David, which resulted in attempted murder. Even after David had been faithful and loyal to Saul and even had achieved victory over Saul's enemies and brought glory to the kingdom, well, Jesus came to earth to give us victory over our enemies, namely death, sin, Satan. But the Jewish leaders killed him. Why? Out of jealousy. If we allow jealousy to fester in our hearts, there's no telling what kind of evil we might end up doing. Jealous people are not rational people. They're not clear-thinking people. So we have to root that out as soon as we see it taking hold of our heart.